Hey everyone, so in today's chapter, again I hope no one ate anything or is currently eating because we are going to be talking about one of the grosser chapters, which is chapter 10 of the My Lady book, Nail Disorders and Diseases. Yes, I'm going to break this video up into a few parts, and I also do want to apologize if my last video was a little too long. I know it was slightly over 20 minutes, and I try to avoid that, but I thought that it was a quicker chapter, less information, you can kind of just cram it in there. Just make sure that you're studying the anatomy on the Cengage or printing out worksheets online and going over the anatomy, because I know it's a lot of info to memorize at once. So with the nail disorders and diseases, the book mentions the nail as a mirror of how healthy the body is. And when we think about that, we know that we can base our health off of our skin, hair, and nails, because when our bodies are healthy, our bodies can afford to use some extra energy to keep our hair, skin, and nails healthy. When that's not the case, we start to show signs of disease. So when it comes to learning about disorders and diseases of the nail, most of the time a disease which infers contagious or an active infection is something that we cannot work with in the salon. Your book brings up the point that a client cannot legally waive away their rights to be treated. So for example, in the salon, if a client says, well, I want to waive state law, or I give you my full consent to treat me even though I have a contagious disease or I might bleed, you have to refuse that because nothing a client can say or do can go above federal or state law. So even if they think that it's okay, it really isn't, because let's say the client changes their mind and says, well, even though I signed a waiver and I told them it was okay, I still want to sue them, chances are the court is going to err on their side. And that's always one thing to be mindful of if you are behind the chair or doing nails on someone. You never want to disobey state and federal regulations. It never ends well. So on the flip side, a disorder, which is usually something that's chronic, is something that can be treated in the salon, or rather something that can be worked with. So for example, if a client has bruised nails, we can disguise it by using some nail polish or what they call varnish. We could find overlays or all kinds of different ways to hide it. So you also want to know that sometimes, because we all come in different shapes and sizes, a person's race can actually make their nail look like it's an abnormal color than it really is. So for example, the book mentions that some races can have more of a yellower tone to their nail. And when we get to one of the disorders in there for a pigmentation thing, some people that are a little bit more darker skinned can show that their nails are a little bit darker, but it doesn't mean that anything's wrong. That's just how it is because they have more melanin or a different type of melanin. But anyhow, we know that a healthy nail is firm but flexible. I know it sounds like a contradiction, but think of it like this way. A nail is going to be strong. We don't want our nails so loose that they're falling apart and kind of crumbling. And we don't want our nails being so firm that they're just going to break at the drop of the hat. You want that happy middle ground. That's what I think about when I hear firm but flexible. The surface of the nail is shiny and smooth. It's not going to be having cracks in it or holes. And unspotted with no wavy ridges, pits, or splits. A healthy nail is also whitish and translucent in appearance, with pinkish color of the nail bed showing through. On the flip side, a nail disorder is a condition caused by injury or disease of the nail unit. Most, if not all, of your clients have experienced a common nail disorder at some part of their lives. So you want to know what kind of disorder you're dealing with or disease. We all have had a hangnail at some point in our life, I guarantee it. I always have more hangnails because I have an abnormal eponychium, and then my hyponychium at times have actually split, and that's very painful. So some of us have experienced that. And there's two ways that we can help a client with a nail disorder. The first is to tell them that they may have a disorder and refer them to a physician if required. That's more of like the safer approach because you're covering your behind. You don't want to have them have a contagious disorder and then contaminate something and spread the disease to someone else. Which, by the way, check out some of the articles of diseases that spread in nail salons. Some of them are pretty gross and others are shocking. Like the one talked about using the Dremel, and someone had HIV and they actually were able to spread it that way. It's very rare, but it's very possible. The second way to deal with a client with a nail disorder is to cosmetically improve certain nail plate conditions if the problem is cosmetic and not a medical condition or disorder, so rather a genetic thing, or maybe they're in a serious injury and their nail hasn't grown back right. You can find ways to kind of disguise it. On a kind of gross note, I had a client that she had really bad diabetes and she ended up losing some of her toenails permanently, I guess due to infection. I didn't really prod, but she told me. And what we had to do in the salon was I had to double check with my instructor if this was okay. we had to take a nail and we had to glue a few of them on there because she wanted it to look like she had real nails. And we kind of like were up in the air about this because that's also maybe an infection risk. If her skin gets soft and there's moisture under there, you know, bacteria can get in and then she can potentially get an amputated foot. But we didn't know anything directly off the top of our heads that was against, so we just did it anyway. For the record, I only did nails when I was in cosmetology school. I never did them while I was out behind the chair, only because I do not like nails, and nails are not something that I'm really into. So the book, it says that you really want to use your best judgment. You know, it's your responsibility. It's your license that's on the line. So clients whose nail or skin is infected, inflamed, broken, or swollen should not receive any services. That's the time when you want to refer them out. So on to some of the different types of disorders. Bruised nails. These are common where when a blood clot forms under the nail, causing a dark purple spot. It may be if you know where someone was hammering wood, they might have missed and they might have hit their nail, and that can cause a blood vessel to break. And then what's going to happen is part of the healing process is our body has to clot. I know you all hear the word blood clot and you think, oh, it's dangerous. Well, no, it's not. Lack of blood clotting would be hemophilia. You need blood clotting, and that's what's happening under the nail. Your nail can be a little bit inflamed because your body's healing. It might be very sore. It might bleed if it's severe. In that case, you don't want to be touching it. But what could happen is when the nail is healing and there is no open cut, you could have purplish or bluish spots in the nail, and that's the broken capillaries healing themselves. And the nail's going to be sore to work with. You want to work carefully with this client. You don't want to cause them any pain, and that's when, if they have bruised nails, I would not recommend massaging it, because if you're not careful at your massage, you can accidentally go like that and hit the bruise. And we've all had bruises, and how much did that hurt if someone hit our bruise? So the best way to deal with this is you can, treat it very carefully, trim it very carefully, use a nail polish to cover it and disguise it. You want to know that with this condition, the dried blood absorbs into the nail bed and epithelium tissue on the underside of the nail plate and grows out with it. Treat this injured nail gently and advise your clients to be more careful with their nails if they want to avoid this problem in the future. Advise them to treat their nails like jewels, not tools. I can tell you, depending on where you live, if you tell a client that, you might get a very nasty response. So kind of take that for a grain of salt. Just kind of like, I prefer to say nothing and just kind of say, oh, you know, that can happen to anyone, but you might want to be careful next time. So you can usually cover it with nail polish or camouflage with an opaque nail enhancement. On to the next one, which is eggshell nails. Swear I have a New York accent in there somewhere. Eggshell nails, which are going to be abnormally thin nails. It's when the nails are a little bit more weaker. And eggshell nails are usually due to malnutrition, bad diet. When we're not getting enough nutrition, the nail can actually get small and break. You can see with diabetes, eating disorder is very common with them. And that can make it very difficult to work with the nail. With eggshell nails, because they're very fine, you don't want to take a file and go in there with a really tough file, because you're going to actually cause more damage and cracking. The book says it's called by hereditary factors as well, internal disease, diet, and medication. Be very careful when manicuring these nails. They can break. You want to use the fine side of an abrasive board, a 2040 grit or higher, and you want to file them gently, but only if needed. It is best not to file a nail plate of this type. A thin protective overlay of enhancement product can be helpful, but do not extend these nails beyond the free edge. So work very carefully with this condition and kind of bring up to the client if and only if they're bringing up the nails as a concern. You can kind of say, look, oh, has anything changed in your life? And you kind of find it out that way. If they don't know, or ask them, were you sick recently? Were you on any kind of medication? How has your diet been? Have you been on a certain type of diet? And you'll usually find the answer out that way. I've known a lot of people who have gone on an Atkins diet and came in with very unhealthy hair and nails because they weren't doing it correctly. The eggshell nails are listed here. They're very thin. Another one, Bow's lines. These are going to be visible depressions running across the width of the natural nail plate. And they're usually from major illness or injury that has traumatized the body. So these aren't going to be your minor illnesses or your minor crash diet. These are going to be serious injuries, such as pneumonia, adverse drug reaction, surgery, heart failure, massive injury, or a long-lasting high fever. And they occur because the matrix that's producing our nail cells has slowed down in producing the nail cells for an extended period of time, so roughly about a week or a month. They cause the nail plate to grow thinner for a period of time, and the nail plate thickness usually returns to normal after the major illness has resolved. So what you're going to see is, As the nail grows out, it'll be really thin, then really thick, and if there's been regular bouts of the illness, such as repeated heart attacks, you're going to see that in the nail, and that's going to be very difficult because with Bowes lines, if you're not filing carefully, what can happen is the nail can break, it could snap, or if you're clipping the nail, I think I had a Bowes line on my toenail when I went through Lyme disease in the treatment, and what had happened was I had to wait for it to grow out because I wanted to go clip. If I wasn't careful, I could have caused the nail to split halfway through, and that would have been very dangerous and very painful. So when it came towards the free edge and it was close enough, the minute I cut it, I kid you not, because it was so weak, the whole thing went and it just flew right off. And it wasn't painful or anything, but because I had that ridge, that could have been worse if it was down below and it was influenced by any other pressure from the clipper. So be very careful when working this. You want to treat the nail well, do maybe like an oil manicure, do an overlay. You can cover it up with polish, but I would be very, very careful if you're going to try to attempt to file these. So on to the next disorder, which is known as hangnail, also known as Aggnail. Aggnail sounds very painful. Can you imagine saying, oh, that person has Aggnails? That would sound really worse than what it is. So the hangnail is actually not, a lot of people think of hangnails as broken free edges or the hyponychium, and it's not. It's actually near the eponychium. It's around here. And it's a condition where the living skin around the nail plate splits and tears. Dry skin or small cuts can result in hangnails. And if there is no sign of infection or an open wound, you can advise the client to have a proper nail care regimen, such as a hot oil manicure, as well as oil treatments, because that will help to aid in the treatment of the nail. Even the paraffin wax dip, that's really good for that. You never want to cut the living skin around the natural nail plate. You're not allowed to, even if it's dry enough and rough looking. You can remove the dead tissue if you're very careful, but you have to be careful when trimming the hangnails because it's against state board to cut living tissue willingly. And if it's not properly cared for, clients can become infected if they have an infected hangnail. It's not a good thing. You have to refer them out. Signs of infection are going to be redness, pain, swelling, or pus, sometimes even a foul odor. The next disorder, which is leukemia spots, and these are white spots. They're also called white spots, and they're a whitish discoloration of the nail, usually caused by a minor injury to the nail matrix. And they're not a symptom of any vitamin or mineral deficiency. That is a myth. There was a myth that the white spots are resulting from calcium or zinc deficiency. If they appear frequently in the nails, they do not indicate disease. As the nail continues to grow, the white spots will eventually disappear. I actually had these a lot as a child, and it's because I used to go out there and I used to get my hands in the dirt and I'd be playing outside with friends. And what had happened is, I guess, either whacking my hand or what have you caused it. But I remember hearing that myth that someone said I was deficient in calcium when I was a kid, and hate to tell you the truth, but I am not anywhere near deficient in calcium. So that's like one of those little things, it's like an old wives' tale, but you might hear that if you either have kids or you have ever been around that or saw that. The white spots can be big or small, and they can be pretty much anywhere in the nail, but they do kind of fade out. I personally thought I grew out of mine, I guess because I'm not outside as much, but I always wondered about that. So the next disorder is going to be called Melek Kiya. And notice that Chia, or the NYCHIA, that is usually referring to nail. Melek Kiya, the Kiya, that's how you say it. Kiya is referring to the nail disorder, so that's kind of one of those Latin roots you have to become familiar with. Melanonychia is the darkening of the fingernails or toenails. It may be seen as a black band within the nail plate, extending from the base to the free edge. In some cases, it affects the entire nail. A localized area of increased pigment cells, melanocytes, usually within the matrix, are responsible for this condition. As matrix cells form the nail plate, the melanin is laid down within the plate by the melanocytes. This is fairly common occurrence and it's considered normal in people of color, but it could be indicative of a disease in Caucasians. So what that means is that usually if you're black, it might be more common to have this. However, if you're white and you do have abnormal pigment specks in your nails, that could be a sign that something is wrong. Not always. It's just something you kind of know. And the nails can appear like a bluish black color. They look really scary at first, and it can look like something is wrong, or you know, the nail could look like it's gonna fall off, but no, it's not. That's not the case at all. It's just that the nail itself is actually colored. It's pretty interesting. It's almost like the nail has its own pigment like the hair does. I did have a student ask me the one time, and this is a really good question. They go, oh, well, Mr. B, can I just bleach it out? And I'm like, putting bleach on nails is not a good thing. It actually can burn the skin. So the best thing you can do in this case is just find a different type of nail polish. If you get a right nail polish will lay right over it, will cover it, and can fix it. Other than that, you can file the nail as usual and do all the regular treatments with it. It's just a color that's in the nail. It's almost comparable to vitiligo in the skincare chapter. So discolored nails are nails that turn a variety of colors, which may indicate surface staining, a systemic disorder, or poor blood circulation. Although quite common, a discolored nail may be caused by several factors, such as surface stains from nail polish, foods, dyes, or smoking. A discolored nail could also be caused by an internal discoloration of the nail plate due to biological, medical, or pharmaceutical reasons. So this is why it's really interesting. I know what hairdressers, there's a meme that went around and it was really funny, and it said, oh, what kind of nail polish are you using? And the person said 6RR, and it was this like orangey reddish color. As hairdressers, we are always around chemicals, and this is why I say wear gloves, because if you don't wear gloves, you can actually stain your nails. I have been guilty of this when I was actually coloring someone's hair, and I should have known better, but we were using like a 2N or something, which is like darkest black or darkest brown. It's like a shade right above black, and it's very dark, and I'd gotten it all over my fingernails and didn't think anything of it. And what had happened was the color had actually stained my nail, and it took about 2 months for it to fully go away. And even as I clipped it, the clippings had color in it. It looked like I had the black plague because my whole fingers looked like completely black. I do want to add into that certain antibiotics can actually discolor the nail and turn it yellow. They can also do that with your hair and your skin. Certain stains like coffee can stain your nails. Henna is really known well for staining your nails. In the earlier chapter, if you read it, I think it was Queen Nefertiti, she would actually dye her nails by dipping them in red henna. And smoking is a big one. Smoking can actually discolor your hair and your nails, and that's what gives them that really gross yellowy color. But discolored nails can be treated like any kind of other condition. It's not serious. Or I should word that in the conditions that we talked about that aren't that serious. You can do just about anything with them. You can file them like you can normally file them, clip them, cover them with an overlay, and do all that good stuff. I will say that when you're working with nails that have nail polish staining, it might have been because the nail polish has not been properly removed. So what you want to do is actually get some nail polish remover on there and be very careful to remove it. That could probably fix the nail polish stains. On to the last condition before I wrap this up, and then I'll come back. You guys can take a 5-minute break. We are going to be talking about onychiophagy, and that phagy means consumption or eating of. So onychiophagy is also known as bitten nails, and this is the result of a habit of chewing the nail or the hardened, damaged skin surrounding the nail plate. Advise the client that frequent manicures and hardened eponychium and care of the hardened eponychium can also help them overcome this habit. At the same time, improving the health appearance of the hands. Sometimes application of nail enhancements can help beautify deformed nails and discourage a client from biting their nails. However, the bitten, damaged skin should never be treated by a cosmetologist. If the skin is broken or infected, no services can be provided. So take your 5-minute break, and I'll be right back to wrap this up.